The human who chose the rejected alien bride, and discovered her hidden daughter. Commander Jaxon Reid stood on the high platform of the Aurelian sphere chamber, a hall so huge it felt like its own world. Thousands of glowing crystal lights floated in the air like tiny stars. Hundreds of alien nobles watched him from every level, their eyes shining with curiosity, respect, and quiet fear. Jaxon felt all of it, but he stayed calm. He had faced worse. He had fought in deserts made of fire, cities filled with poison air, and ships torn apart in deep space. A crowd of aliens staring at him was nothing. Only hours ago, he had saved the Aurelian homeworld from a machine that should never have existed, a Titan core automaton, built centuries ago by an unknown race and buried deep under the planet. It had awakened without warning. It was hungry for destruction. Their soldiers failed to stop it. So Jaxon went in alone. He crawled through burning tunnels, dodged spinning laser webs, and planted EMP charges inside the machine's metallic heart. When the giant core collapsed, Jaxon jumped into a shielded shaft at the very last second. He barely made it out alive. And now the Empire saw him as a hero. At the center of the chamber sat the Aurelian High Council, tall beings who glowed like living silver. Their robes shimmered like liquid metal as they watched him with unreadable eyes. The oldest among them, Counselor Sarion, rose from his throne. His voice echoed like rolling thunder. "Commander Jaxon Reid of Earth," he said. "You saved our world. You showed courage no Aurelian warrior has shown in generations. Our empire owes you a great reward." Whispers rippled across the chamber. Sarion continued, "By ancient tradition, you may choose anything you desire. Wealth. Land. Or." He paused. "A wife from our royal bloodline." The hall fell silent. Jaxon did not move. He had heard rumors of these traditions but never believed them. Yet now the offer stood in front of him like a door he had no choice but to open. A side door slid open. A line of Aurelian royal women stepped out. They were tall, perfect, glowing softly like carved silver statues. Their hair shimmered like flowing starlight. Their movements were graceful and elegant. The crowd bowed in admiration. But Jaxon's eyes did not stay on them. At the far end of the line stood a woman who did not shine like the others. She was shorter. Her skin had faint marks from old injuries. Her glow was dim, almost gone. She kept her head down as if she was used to being invisible. Her name, whispered softly through the chamber, was Lyra. She did not look perfect. She did not look polished. She looked real. And when she lifted her eyes for a brief moment, Jaxon saw something the others did not have: pain, courage, and a quiet fire refusing to die. Counselor Sarion spread his arms. "Commander Jaxon Reid," he said. "Choose any bride you desire." Every royal woman lifted her chin proudly. Except Lyra. She stepped back, expecting nothing. Jaxon pointed immediately. "I choose her." The entire chamber gasped. Several nobles stood in shock. One woman even dropped her jeweled staff. Sarion froze. "Her? The dim one?" "Yes," Jaxon said without hesitation. "Her." Lyra's eyes widened. She looked around, confused, terrified, unsure whether he was serious. She had spent her whole life ignored, mocked, or hidden away. No one in her own empire had ever chosen her for anything. And now a human hero had picked her without a second thought. The council exchanged uneasy glances. Something was wrong. Something about Lyra frightened them. Lyra stepped forward slowly, her hands trembling. Jaxon felt it in his bones. This was no normal choice. He had just stepped into a secret the Aurelian Empire desperately wanted to keep buried. And nothing would ever be the same. The transport ship lifted quietly from the palace platform, leaving the glowing capital behind. Commander Jaxon Reid sat beside Lyra, the woman he had chosen in front of the entire empire. Her hands lay tightly folded in her lap. She kept her gaze on the floor, as if afraid to meet his eyes. Jaxon watched her silently. She was nothing like the perfect royal woman the council had shown him. She did not shine. She did not wear the smooth silver glow the Aurelians prized. And yet she carried something stronger, an invisible strength hidden behind years of pain. "You're very quiet," Jaxon said gently. Lyra swallowed hard. "I don't speak much." She glanced at him for a moment. "Talking only made things worse for me." Jaxon nodded. "Then you don't have to talk until you want to." She turned away again. He could see the fear in her posture, the way her shoulders stiffened every few seconds. She was not afraid of him. She was afraid of what waited on the moon they were traveling to. The ship glided through a field of pale mist as they approached a small green moon orbiting the Aurelian world. Jaxon had seen thousands of planets, but this one felt strange, quiet, heavy, as if carrying old memories in the air itself. Lyra finally spoke, her voice a whisper. "They sent me here 10 years ago." Jaxon frowned. "Exile?" She nodded. "They called it a residence. But it is exile. A place to hide anyone the council doesn't want seen." Jaxon understood now why the council had trembled when he chose her. They didn't expect him to walk into the one place filled with their secrets. The transport landed on a metal platform surrounded by tall, dark trees. The air smelled of wet earth. Mist curled around their feet as they walked across a narrow bridge leading to a small home made of stone and pale wood. No guards. No servants. No lights. Just silence. Lyra paused at the door, her hand resting on the old wooden frame. She hesitated as if gathering courage. "There is something you must know," she said quietly. "Something I never told my people." Jackson's instincts sharpened. "I'm listening." Lyra pushed open the door. Warm candlelight flickered inside the house. The air smelled of herbs and something sweet. Cushions lay scattered on the floor. A small table held simple wooden toys. And then Jaxon saw her. A young girl stood at the far end of the room. She looked about 11 years old, with soft dark hair and bright eyes that shimmered strangely, half Aurelian glow, half human warmth. Her posture was tense, like a wild animal ready to run. The girl stepped back, hiding behind a shelf. Lyra dropped to her knees and opened her arms gently. "It's all right, Mira," she whispered. "He won't hurt you." Jaxon froze. "Mira," he repeated slowly. "She's your daughter." Lyra nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "My child. My secret. My reason to stay alive." Jaxon took a step forward, but the girl flinched and pressed herself against the wall. Her eyes flickered with a strange energy that made the candles tremble. Lyra held the girl tightly. "I hid her from the council," she said. "They would have taken her the moment she was born." Jaxon looked at the girl again. Her eyes. They were powerful. Too powerful for a child. "Her father?" he asked. Lyra lowered her head. "Human. A traveler from your world. He protected me. He loved me. And he died because of it." The room fell silent. Jaxon understood everything now, the fear in the council's eyes, Lyra's exile, the tension in the ceremony. It was not Lyra they feared. It was the child. Mira peeked at him again, her eyes glowing faintly. Jaxon smiled softly. "I'm not here to take you away," he said. "I'm here to keep you safe." The girl didn't move, but her breathing calmed. Lyra wiped her eyes and whispered, "Jaxon, the council will come for her one day. They always do." Jaxon straightened his shoulders. "Then we make sure they fail." Outside, the wind blew softly across the moon. A warning. A whisper. A promise of danger coming. But inside the small house, for the first time in years, Lyra felt a single spark of hope. Jaxon Reid had chosen her. And he had no idea that choice would soon make him the enemy of an empire. The moon was quiet, but the silence felt heavy, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Inside the small house, Jaxon Reid watched the young girl, Mira, with careful eyes. She hid behind Lyra, peeking out every few seconds, studying him like a creature unsure if it should run or stay. Lyra brushed Mira's hair gently. "You can come out," she whispered. "He's here to help us." Mira didn't move. Her bright eyes glowed faintly in the candlelight. There was a strange tension around her, as if the room itself reacted to her emotions. Jaxon crouched down so he wasn't towering over her. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not your enemy." Mira's fingers tightened around her mother's dress. The candles flickered again. Jaxon noticed it immediately. The flicker wasn't from wind. It was from her. "Lyra," Jaxon said quietly. "She's different, isn't she?" Lyra nodded slowly. She pulled Mira closer. "Her father was human. I am Aurelian. Our people believed such a child should not exist. They thought she would be unstable, dangerous, unpredictable." Jackson's eyes softened. "She's just a child." "She is," Lyra whispered. "But she also has power no one understands." Mira looked up finally, her gaze meeting Jackson's. Her eyes glowed brighter, too bright for a normal Aurelian child, too warm for a fully human one. A mix of both. Jaxon smiled gently. "Hi. I'm Jaxon." The girl didn't answer. She lifted her hand slightly. A wooden toy on the floor shook, rose into the air for a second, then dropped when she gasped and covered her mouth. Jackson's breath caught. Telekinesis. At her age? Lyra's voice trembled. She can move things, sense emotions, sometimes even hear thoughts. The council saw her abilities when she was very young. That's why they wanted her gone. They fear anything they can't control. Mira spoke for the first time. Her voice was small but steady. "They said I'm a mistake." Jaxon felt something twist in his chest. No child should ever say that. He walked to the toy, picked it up, and held it out to her. "Listen," he said. "Mistakes don't save worlds. Mistakes don't protect their mothers. Mistakes don't make an entire council panic." Mira blinked. "I make them panic." "Oh yes," Jaxon said with a smirk. "You scare them more than any weapon I've ever seen." Lyra placed a hand over her heart, torn between pride and fear. Mira stepped out a little more, curiosity fighting her caution. "Do you think I'm dangerous?" she asked. Jaxon shook his head. "I think you're powerful. Power only becomes dangerous when it's used without control." Mira looked at her hands. "I don't want to hurt anyone." "That's why you won't," Jaxon said. "Because you care." The girl's glow softened. The air in the room warmed. Jaxon slowly stood. "Lyra, she needs training. She needs someone who won't fear her." Lyra nodded. "I tried to teach her to hide it, but it keeps growing." "She doesn't need to hide," Jaxon said. "She needs to understand." Mira stared up at him, her eyes wide. "Can you teach me?" Jaxon hesitated. He was a soldier, not a mentor. But looking at her, this small child who carried more fear than any soldier he'd met, he felt something awaken inside him. "Yes," he said finally. "I'll help you control it. You won't face this alone." Lyra let out a shaky breath, relief washing over her face. For years she had carried her daughter's secret alone. Now she had someone willing to stand with them. But just as that hope grew, Jaxon felt something prick at the back of his neck. A tremor in the floor. A shift in the air. A faint vibration only a trained soldier would notice. He stepped toward the window. Outside, the trees swayed in an unnatural pattern. The wind grew colder. Shadows moved between the branches, too smooth, too silent. Jackson's voice dropped. Lyra. Mira, get behind me. Myra's glow flickered nervously. Mama, someone's watching. Lyra's face went pale. No, not already. Jaxon tightened his grip on his pulse weapon. Someone had found them. Someone was coming for the girl. And the real danger of the Aurelian Empire was about to reveal itself. The forest around the house grew unnaturally still. The mist thickened, curling like cold fingers around the wooden walls. Jaxon Reid stepped toward the window, eyes sharp, muscles tense. His instincts screamed danger. Myra's small voice trembled behind him. They're here. Lyra grabbed her daughter's shoulders. Stay behind me. Don't use your powers unless you must. Jaxon checked the power level on his pulse weapon. Half charged. Not good, but enough for a fight. A soft crack sounded outside. Then another. Then the unmistakable hum of cloaking units. Council hunters, Jaxon growled. They sent elite soldiers. Lyra's breath caught. Already? They shouldn't know. But the door answered for her. Boom. It exploded inward, blasting splinters across the room. Lyra screamed. Mira fell backward, covering her head. Smoke filled the air. Dark armored figures stepped through the doorway, faces hidden behind glowing masks, weapons humming with deadly light. They moved with robotic speed, silent as shadows. By order of the Aurelian High Council, the lead soldier called out, "Hand over the hybrid child." Jaxon didn't think. He fired. A pulse shot slammed into one soldier's chest, sending him crashing into a wall. Two others rushed forward. Jaxon rolled behind a table, firing again, but their armor absorbed most of the impact. Lyra pulled Mira toward the corner. Stay down. Don't move. Mira was shaking, her glow flickering like a struggling flame. The soldiers fired energy bolts across the room. The walls sizzled. Furniture exploded. A beam missed Jaxon by inches, burning a line across the floor. He looked back at Mira. Mira. Listen to me. You have to focus. I can't, she cried. I'm scared. Then use it, Jaxon shouted. Fear is still energy. Use it. A soldier charged at him with a blade of crackling plasma. Jaxon blocked it with his rifle, sparks flying. He kicked the soldier back, but another attacker struck him from the side, sending him crashing into a shelf. Lyra screamed, Jaxon. He groaned, pushing himself up. I'm fine. Keep Mira safe. But the soldiers were closing in. One aimed directly at Mira. No. Lyra shouted, throwing herself in front of her daughter. A blast hit her side, sending her crashing into the wall. Mira screamed. Something inside her broke open. Her eyes burst with light, bright, powerful, uncontrolled. The air vibrated. The ground trembled. Every candle flame shot upward. Jaxon staggered to his feet just as the room filled with a rising hum. Mira, he whispered. Let it out. The girl stood on trembling legs. Tears streamed down her face. I don't want to hurt anyone. You won't, Jaxon said. You'll protect us. A soldier lifted his weapon toward her. Mira screamed. A shockwave of raw energy exploded outward. The nearest soldiers flew backward as if hit by a hurricane. The energy shields on their armor shattered like glass. Weapons tore from their hands. The wooden roof creaked under the pressure. Lyra shielded her eyes. Mira, stop, you'll hurt yourself. But Mira wasn't attacking. She was shielding. A glowing dome formed around Lyra and Jaxon, blocking incoming fire. Every energy bolt struck the shield and rebounded. Jaxon watched the girl in awe. She's stronger than any psychic I've seen. Myra's glow grew brighter and brighter, but her legs buckled. Jaxon rushed forward and caught her before she collapsed. Easy, easy. You did enough. The remaining soldiers regrouped outside. Jaxon could hear them speaking through static-filled comms. Target confirmed. Requesting more units. Prepare containment chamber. Jaxon cursed. They're bringing reinforcements. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Lyra grabbed Mira and held her tightly. We have to run. We can't stay here anymore. Jaxon shook his head. Running won't work. They'll track us anywhere on this moon. Lyra's voice cracked. Then what do we do? Jaxon turned to the demolished doorway, pulse weapon shaking in his hand. We don't hide, he said. We take the fight back to them. Lyra stared at him, shocked. You want to face the council? I want to expose them, Jaxon said. In front of their whole empire. He looked at Mira, who clung weakly to Lyra's arm. They tried to erase a child, he said softly. Now the entire empire needs to see the truth. Outside, more shadows moved through the mist. The soldiers were coming. The war for the girl had begun. The stolen transport ship cut through the dark sky, leaving the misty moon behind. Jaxon Reid sat in the co-pilot's seat, one hand pressed against his bruised ribs, the other gripping the controls. His eyes stayed sharp, scanning every star, every shadow. Behind him, Lyra held Mira, who slept with her head against her mother's chest. The girl's glow had faded, leaving her looking small, tired, and far too fragile for a child with such power. Lyra whispered, she burned too much energy. She can't do this again, not soon. Jaxon nodded. Then we make sure she doesn't have to. Lyra looked at him with fear in her eyes. You truly plan to go to the capital? After what they did? I'm not running, Jaxon said. Not from cowards who attack a child. The ship descended toward the Aurelian homeworld. Massive glowing cities spread across the surface like networks of light. The capital, Aurelios Prime, shone brightest, towers of silver stone rising into the clouds, roads glowing like rivers of fire. Jaxon landed the ship in the public docking zone, not hiding, not sneaking. If the council wanted to stop them, they would have to do it in front of the entire city. As they stepped out, crowds turned immediately. Whispers spread like a wave. That's the human. The one who saved the planet. Why is he with her? Is that, a child? Lyra kept her head low. Old habits. Old wounds. Jaxon placed a hand on her back. Walk with your head up. They need to see your strength. She lifted her chin slowly. And the people gasped. Many had not seen her in years. Some had assumed she was dead. The walk toward the Grand Council Hall felt endless. Soldiers watched from rooftops. Drones circled above them. Citizens followed them like shadows, growing in number with every step. Mira stirred weakly in her mother's arms. Where are we? To the place that hurt you, Jaxon said softly. So you never have to fear it again. When they reached the chamber doors, Aurelian guards blocked the entrance. Halt. The council is in session. Jaxon stepped forward. Good. Let them stay seated. They're about to hear the truth. The guards aimed their weapons, but the crowd gasped loudly behind Jaxon. In one smooth motion, Mira raised her tired hand. A soft wave of blue energy rippled outward. The guards' weapons powered down instantly, their energy cores flickering dead. Jaxon smirked. She said we could go in. The guards stepped aside. Inside, the Grand Council Hall erupted in shock. Counselor Sarion stood abruptly, his silver glow dimming. "Commander Reid," he said sharply. "You were not summoned." "No," Jaxon said, walking toward the center. "I came anyway." Gasps echoed across the hall. Lyra stepped beside him, holding Mira close. The council members froze at the sight of the child. Sirion's voice cracked. "You brought that?" Mira flinched, hiding against Lyra's shoulder. Jackson's face went cold. "That child is named Mira. She's half human. Half Aurelian. And all she ever did was exist." Nervous murmurs filled the chamber. Jaxon continued, voice rising, "You exiled Lyra for surviving. You hunted her daughter for being born. And tonight, your assassins tried to kill all three of us." The council stiffened. Jaxon turned to the crowd now gathering inside the hall. "Tell them what you sent," he shouted. "Tell them about your soldiers." One counselor snapped, "You lie." Jaxon drew a blood-stained Aurelian insignia from his pocket, the mark torn from one of the fallen soldiers. He threw it at their feet. "Your mark," he said. "Your orders. Your fear." Silent shock filled the hall. Lyra stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. "I hid for 10 years because you told me Mira was a monster. But she is only a girl who wants to live." Sarion tried to speak, but Mira lifted her head. Her eyes glowed softly, not with danger, but with calm. She raised her tiny hand. A gentle pulse spread through the room, warm, soft, harmless. Even the walls seemed to breathe out relief. The crowd gasped. "She is not a threat," Lyra whispered. "She is proof that our people and humans can share a future." Jaxon stepped in front of the council. "Your empire doesn't fear her power. It fears what she represents, change." The chamber exploded into voices. Some shouted in fear, others in support. The ground beneath the empire had shifted. And now the whole galaxy was watching. Lyra held Mira close, tears falling silently. Jaxon stood beside them like a wall of iron. No turning back. No hiding. Only truth. The empire would either rise today, or shatter. The grand chamber had never been this loud. Voices clashed like thunder against the shimmering walls. Some citizens shouted in anger, others in fear, and many simply stared at Mira, the small glowing child who was never supposed to exist. Jaxon Reid stood firm in the center, facing the High Council. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "You called her a danger," he said, pointing to Mira. "But the only danger I saw tonight came from you." Counselor Sirion's hands shook with fury. "She is an unstable hybrid. A threat to our bloodline. She must be contained." Mira whimpered and clung to Lyra's arm. Jaxon stepped in front of them. "You call yourselves leaders, but you attacked a child in the dark. That is not leadership. That is fear hiding in fancy robes." Gasps spread across the room. The council had never been insulted publicly. But the people were listening now, truly listening. One counselor rose, voice sharp. "Commander Reid, you have no right to speak of our laws." "I have every right," Jaxon said, "because I saved this world when your laws couldn't." Silence fell instantly. Jaxon turned to face the citizens watching from every level of the chamber. "You all heard about the Titan Core automaton," he said. "But did they tell you why it woke up? Why it almost destroyed your cities?" The crowd murmured in confusion. Jaxon pointed straight at the council. "Because they ignored warnings from their own scientists. Because they care more about perfect bloodlines than saving lives. Because they hide mistakes instead of fixing them." Sarion slammed his staff down. "Enough." But it was too late, the truth had already set fire to the room. A woman in the crowd shouted, "Is it true? You sent soldiers to kill a child?" Another called out, "We saw broken armor on the moon. We know what happened." A third cried, "Why would they fear a little girl unless she was stronger than them?" The council struggled to regain control. "Silence," Sarion demanded. But the people didn't stop. Their voices rose higher, bolder, braver. Jaxon stepped aside so Lyra and Mira stood visible to all. Lyra's voice shook, but she spoke anyway. "They told me Mira was a mistake. That I should never show my face again. They sent me away to die. But look at her, she is a child who only wants to live." Mira lifted her head. Her eyes shimmered. Slowly, she raised her hand. Not in fear, but in peace. A soft pulse of light flowed out from her. Warm. Gentle. Beautiful. The room fell silent. No weapon. No attack. Just calm. Mira whispered, "I don't want to hurt anyone." A soft cry rose from the front row, an elder Aurelian woman wiping tears from her eyes. She's not dangerous. She's just like my granddaughter." Jaxon nodded. "Exactly. She's not a monster. She's hope." Counselor Sirion's face twisted in desperation. "Hope. She is a disruption to everything we built." Jaxon stepped closer, locking eyes with him. "Maybe what you built wasn't worth keeping." The chamber erupted. Half the citizens cheered. Half shouted in fear. All eyes stayed locked on the council. One of the younger counselors, her glow dim with guilt, finally stood. "Sarion, they deserve the truth. We cannot keep hiding behind old laws." Sarion hissed, "Do not betray your own blood." She straightened her shoulders. "You betrayed us first." A shock ran through the room. The council was cracking, splitting from the inside. Jaxon felt Mira grab his hand. "Did I do something wrong?" she whispered. He knelt in front of her. "No. You showed them the truth. And truth scares people who lie." Lyra placed a hand on Jackson's shoulder. "What will happen now?" Jaxon rose slowly, staring at the council, now shaken, cornered, exposed. "The Empire is choosing," he said. "And it's choosing today." Outside, the city bells began to ring, an old Aurelian signal used only during emergencies or leadership crises. Citizens stormed toward the hall, filling the streets. Lights flickered across the skyline as messages spread instantly through every screen and device. The council had lost control. Jaxon looked at Lyra and Mira, both trembling but standing tall. "This isn't the end," he said. "It's the beginning of something new." The chamber doors burst open as more citizens flooded inside. And for the first time, the Aurelian Empire wasn't looking at its council for answers. It was looking at them. Lyra. Mira. And the human who stood by their side. The Empire was ready to change. Or collapse trying. The bells of Aurelio's Prime echoed through every street, every tower, every glowing bridge. The whole capital trembled with voices rising in waves, fear, anger, hope. For the first time in generations, the Aurelian people questioned the council openly. Inside the grand chamber, the council stood cornered. Counselor Sirion's silver glow flickered with rage. His voice cracked as he shouted over the crowd's roar. "Order! You must obey the council. This chaos cannot stand." But no one listened. The people weren't looking at Sarion anymore. They were looking at Lyra, holding Mira close. They were looking at Jaxon, the human who refused to bow. Jaxon stepped forward. His presence alone quieted the crowd. His voice was steady, unshaken. "The Empire reaches a crossroads today," he said. "Will you follow leaders who hide their mistakes? Leaders who try to erase a child because she is different? Or will you build a future where strength comes from truth?" Sarion slammed his staff on the floor. We protected this empire for centuries. Jaxon shook his head. You protected your power, not your people. Gasps echoed. The council stiffened. Lyra took a shaky breath and stepped into the center beside Jaxon. Mira held her mother's hand tightly, her small frame glowing softly with courage. Lyra spoke, her voice quiet but clear. I hid in fear for 10 years. Not because of my daughter, but because of you. She faced the council. You taught the Empire to fear imperfection. But imperfection is what saved your world tonight. Her words struck like lightning. The younger counselor, the one who had shown doubt, rose to her feet slowly. I can no longer support these old laws, she said. The people deserve new leadership. New strength. New truth. The chamber erupted in cheers. Sarayan shouted, You betray us all. She turned her back to him. No. You betrayed the Empire when you hunted a child. The final crack appeared in the council's unity. One by one, other counselors lowered their staffs. Some bowed their heads in shame. Some simply stepped back, overwhelmed. Sarayan stood alone. He glared at Jaxon. You think you can walk into our world and change everything? Jaxon met his stare calmly. I didn't change your world. Mira did. Lyra did. Your truth did. Mira peeked out from behind Lyra and whispered, I didn't mean to break anything. Jaxon knelt and stroked her hair gently. You didn't break the Empire, Mira. You saved it. A soft glow rose from the girl's hands, warm, gentle, controlled. This time it wasn't fear or panic powering her. It was peace. Acceptance. Hope. The light filled the chamber, spreading across every wall, every face. Citizens gasped, not in fear, but awe. The glow reached even Sarayan. He froze as the warm light touched his skin. And for the first time, he looked small. Mira let her hand drop. I don't want people to fight, she whispered. I want everyone to be safe. The hall went silent. Finally, an elder citizen stepped forward from the crowd. His voice was steady. Let Lyra speak for us now. She understands pain. She understands truth. We need a leader who has lived what we lived. Cheers echoed through the chamber. Lyra. Lyra. Princess Lyra. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She clutched Myra's hand. I'm no leader. Jaxon stood and faced her gently. You are. You survived exile. You raised a child in a world that tried to erase you. Strength is not in your glow. It's in your heart. Mira smiled and tugged her mother's robe. I believe in you. Lyra's breath broke, but she stepped toward the center. Light from the ceiling crystals bathed her scarred face, not hiding her imperfections, but illuminating them like symbols of survival. Sarayan sank to his knees, defeated. Jaxon turned to the people. The old empire ends today. A new one begins, with truth, not fear. The chamber erupted in thunderous applause. Mira hugged Jaxon tightly. We're safe now. He smiled. For today. And tomorrow, we carve a better path. Lyra placed her hand on his arm. You changed our destiny. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to, Jaxon said softly. Just keep moving forward. Together. Outside, the first rays of morning lit the city. The silver towers glowed like they had come alive. Birds soared across the brightening sky. For the first time, the Empire looked full of possibility. Jaxon, Lyra, and Mira walked out onto the grand balcony, facing the rising sun. The crowd below cheered louder, filling the air with hope. A new dawn had arrived. Not because of perfection. But because a flawed princess, a brave child, and a stubborn human dared to change their fate. And across the galaxy, a legend began to spread. The human who chose the Forgotten One, and rewrote an empire.